I mean, why should men care about missions in the first place?
Yes. Why would these people travel so far to come and do something for us? That was their mindset. Why would they do it for us?
You are a boy.
But they're exactly
Yeah, that's what I said.
Like,
Well, Jesus told us to go to all the nations.
What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Patros Podcast, where we are on a journey embracing healthy masculinity. My name is Allan Pereira, Jeff Ford, CEO of Man Up and Go. And today, we have extremely special guests. We have people from the Man Up team.
Wow.
We got Vicki. I'm not going to say her full name because that's one thing that I mess around with her. She can say it if she wants to. And then we have Josh.
Yep.
What's up, y'all?
Oh,
what's going on?
hello.
How you guys doing? I do have a random question. So they just recently got back, I'm not going to tell you when, from Africa, from Uganda, and did you guys go to Ethiopia?
I did.
Jeff did? Okay. Did you wake up today at 5 a.m. and work out?
I did.
This guy is a beast.
A machine.
He got back
I don't get
a
it.
day ago.
But I got back a day ago, so.
Oh, we're not going to say when.
But did you
A day
wake
ago
up and
is.
do it the first day?
Yesterday.
No, I didn't. The
No
first
5
day.
a.m.
Did you work out at the airport?
I didn't really work out on this trip because...
You didn't need to.
Well,
It was all a workout.
I kind of wanted a break.
Mm.
So it gave me like a good...
Wow.
Right? It gave me a good opportunity to rest.
Yeah.
Guys,
It's a lot of
I've traveled
physical
with
activity,
Jeff.
too.
This man works out like I breathe, which isn't enough.
You did work out. You played soccer.
You did.
I did.
Sorry, football.
I mean, I did work out a couple times on the trip.
See?
But I didn't do
He's an addict.
I didn't do what I normally do because I was like, my body could use a...
That's good.
I had trouble sleeping this time. Or not sleeping. I had trouble adjusting. Dude, February 1st, we did our podcast.
Yeah.
And I can't kick this I got
That
like
thing
this
that
lingering.
you had.
Yeah, I feel okay.
He gave it to me, by the way.
Really? Right after that?
What, cold?
Whatever he
Sickness?
had, I was like,
Oh, man,
Yep.
I got it.
Well,
past week.
It's nothing. It's just a gift that keeps on giving. You guys are welcome.
Yeah.
our immune systems are working out.
That's right.
But seriously, though, guys, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Are unique in the world in that I don't think we've had Man Up staff. And we certainly haven't had a woman
Hey.
Ooh.
on the Patros Podcast. And to have Victoria
Star.
Star.
With 2 R's.
I think is quite appropriate because of any woman that I associate with Man Up, the first person I think of is you.
Aw.
So you were there in 2013, which was fairly recent and new into the Man Up
Yep.
existence. And then you became a board member. And then you were a team member / staff member. So I feel like you've seen the gamut. And if anybody is qualified to talk about stuff Man Up related, at least overseas, it's you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. God had a plan, for sure.
yeah. So we're glad to have you.
Thank you.
And Josh, you got to experience the international sensation that is
I did.
No,
Man
first
Up and
time
Go.
action.
Yeah.
Love first-timers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you got called upon to say something at some point, right?
Yeah, I had the opportunity to once speak to one of our cohorts right there in Jinja, and then when we were in Palace at Pastor Abraham's church, I got to speak there too. So
Yep.
Yeah. So one of the things you
Preach.
have to be ready to do
yeah,
on a Man Up trip internationally is you got to be ready to talk.
Because they just want to hear.
Because
from
this
you.
at any given time, they're like, Mzungu, you come, speak to us. For those who don't know, Mzungu is a white person.
Yeah.
Come and speak to us. I'll share a
It's
quick
a pet
story.
name.
It is. I'll share a quick story. The Alan, you haven't heard this yet. I was asked to go to a funeral while I was out there, and I've never been to.
Wait, this is like this trip.
This is
Yeah.
I've never been to an African funeral. And our director is just kind of like, yeah, we need to go over there. Just kind of need to, say hi and invite the pastor. And I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever. So we show up. And meanwhile, the path is about as wide as my body. And we're on this boda together. And I'm just like, man, where is he leading me? And there were like...
Boda is motorcycle.
Motorcycle, thank you. And all these people are walking that way or walking back. And they're all dressed up in their Gomezes, which are like the nice dresses.
Traditional.
Yeah, and what's the kazis? Koozies? That's not a koozie. That keeps your drink warm. It's like
Bud Light, Budweiser.
For the men?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
A commie.
I don't think that's right either.
We'll get you thrown in jail in the 50s. I'm trying to think about, anyway.
Their dress.
Traditional
garments.
Male garments.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like a kind of like a...
We'll look that up
almost
later.
like a dress thing. But anyway, so I'm going out there, and we get out there. So I've never seen so many bodas stacked up in all my life.
Did you take a photo?
No, because it was a funeral, and I felt like this is an odd place to take
This
a...
Mzungu white guy is just
He's
like,
hey,
But you
YOLO.
wanted to.
bike week at the funeral.
yeah, like I didn't know what was appropriate and what wasn't.
yeah.
But I roll up on this thing. There are people everywhere. There were over 1,000 people at this funeral because it's kind of like if you don't show up, you're going to be
disrespect.
blackballed.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they won't sell you, bread in the marketplace if you don't show up to this funeral. Like that's
How do they
roll.
keep tabs?
Oh, wow.
It's a good question.
They probably do.
There's like a sign-in sheet. They just know.
Yeah.
So like roll out, and I'm telling you, it was for someone with sensory issues, it would have been very difficult because. Like, I got people over here. I got the ladies in their Gomezes, like, over here. I've got kids on the ground, like, playing. You've got, like, a food station that's, like, set up. And there's, like, it's like, you're getting your rice and your beans and all of this. Meanwhile, the whole time, there's some guy on a loudspeaker because that's what Africa is.
Yeah.
Like, it's some guy on a loudspeaker. And
the microphone
everywhere you go.
and speakers.
so,
yes.
like, and there's people everywhere. There's tents up. There's like it's chaotic. I'm trying to paint a chaotic.
And that
scene.
happened in like a 24-hour period, right? Didn't that guy
Correct.
just pass?
He passed
Thursday?
I think he passed late Wednesday night, and this was on a Friday.
That's pretty
Oh,
amazing.
wow.
Yeah.
So it's like the whole community is out. So then I roll up, and it's like all these. It was all these people. I could not believe how many people were there. And of course, Pastor Jeffrey, takes me to like the front of the line. And makes this lady get out of her seat.
No.
So,
Sit
the Mzungu down
kills
the
me.
front row.
The
and I'm
honor,
like,
so
yo,
much
I don't-
masculinity.
I know. I'm like,
Get
I
out of
don't
seat.
need that. But it's
But
like,
that's their culture.
it's the
You
culture.
can't-
It's
yeah.
disrespectful.
Yeah.
It is.
And so not only was he happy to like kick her out of her seat, she was happy to get out. of her seat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so she sits me down, and I'm just feeling so awkward. And then next thing I hear, and no, the CEO for Men Up and Go. And I'm like, well, I'm being like
Plug?
like, yeah, there's a plug. But because the guy who was up there speaking was from
One
a
of our
cohort.
cohorts?
Yeah, and so he recognized me and
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there just listening. I'm just taking this in. I got this.
Yeah.
And I really was thinking, this is an amazing. And I'm thinking in my head, wow, we don't do this in the U.S.
No.
Like,
Yep.
this
Like
is
show honor.
honor this way. And I'm like so impressed with everything. And we're there about 3 minutes. And then Jeffrey leans over. He's like, I think you need to say something. So within 5 minutes of showing up to this thing that I have no idea what it is, and there's over 1,000 people, and it's all this chaos and my sensory overload, I'm up there with a mic in my hand trying to speak about Richard from our cohort. I'm just like, only in Africa would something like this happen. So you just never know.
That's an
You
honor.
gotta
Was
be
that
ready.
Palisa?
It was a total
Such an
honor.
honor.
This was like in Bulangira.
Bulangira.
Like, kind of around
was
that
that at
Right,
Jeffrey's
for
church?
Jeffrey's.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it was
okay,
one
cool.
of the original members 5 years ago. It was in the first cohort, and I think he died of cancer. So I just got up and spoke about the hope we have in Jesus, but I did honor them. I said, listen,
Gospel opportunity.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. I just preached the gospel in a mini, 3 minutes, and then just told him, I said, listen, in America, you're lucky. Like, if you got 30 people at a funeral,
that's a big deal.
You're good. If you're an honorable man, maybe you have 100. I said, so for all of you to show up, I said, I just love what I see here. And I think I said something to the effect of, I think you all do it better than
we do,
than America. Sure. And they were like, we do. We are better. So, that was good. But so that was my like interesting, crazy story from the trip. Actually, I had several more.
Yeah. But that's one that there's like a takeaway. I mean, they all have takeaways.
They all have takeaways, but this one I thought was truly like.
You'll never forget that.
Yeah, and the way that they honor their, the people that passed, I thought was. No.
Isn't that the beauty of like multicultural and multi-generational like community is that like we have brothers and sisters overseas that we could take from their culture in the sense of like, wow, that's something that we might need to learn how to implement in our culture. For sure. And not be so busy where we don't like commune as a community for people that we might not know as intimately, but we still show up.
Having you guys on today, yes, we just went on this trip, but I think more importantly than the trip, maybe not normal, but as important is, for guys, this is a podcast about healthy masculinity, as you guys know. And I think that if you talk to most Christians, most people, but definitely like in the Christian realm, and say like our mission's important, they would say, oh yeah, they're important. But I think for most people that would be the Sunday school answer, because there are very few people that I know who go on mission trips. And there's a big there's a big push now on like, well, what is the point of short-term missions? Like, is that even like useful? And then some people will say, no, it's actually harmful. Like, there's plenty of articles on the internet about how harmful it is. So there kind of is that pushback. But in general, like, we would say missions is important because that's how we get the word out about the gospel. But I just don't know that a lot of people are engaged in sharing the gospel. And of course, there's, they say there's no transformation by aviation. Like, if you think that, a mission trip is going to
change your life,
change your ability to share the gospel, it's like, well, if you're not sharing the gospel here in the U.S., you're probably not going to be sharing the gospel overseas either. So there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of nuance to this topic. But I think in terms of men and how we're supposed to live our lives, there is a great commission. I mean, for men and women.
There is.
There's a great commission. People. So what does that look like? And, so just kind of wanted to dive into that and say, from a standpoint of healthy masculinity, can we really expect with everything else that men have going on in their lives, just trying to provide for their families and take care of things and, be a good dad, be a good husband, like all the stuff that men are dealing with, can we really expect them to take missions seriously? Like, what do you guys? I mean, is that something that we need to expect out of our men, or are we asking too much? Kind of open ended there.
I feel like Josh has that.
I would say that. Are we asking expecting men to get into missions? Is that kind of where we're going with this, or
participate?
Or what's
in
the
missions?
Value?
I mean, why should men care about missions in the first place? Is that really something that they've got a million other things going on? Trust me, I do. I know I do.
Yeah.
I know you guys do. Is that really something we should be caring about?
Yeah. One of the so when we got there, we did after the first work day, I got to talk to Pastor Andrew for just a minute, and I just was very curious because, like, for the people watching. The church is set up. It's just a big, long building, and then on the outside, it's surrounded by a fence. And there's, for very lack of a better term, but that would be the term that they would use there, surrounded by slums, like just people living in dirt floors and like just a lean-to almost. And and I just was curious to I just asked him like, hey, what's the impression or what's the thoughts about from the community, not your church, but the people around you, like when they see people like us come over there, like different skin color, different language. And because in my mind, I thought maybe there's a negative connotation from their viewpoint of us coming. And I wanted to know, like, what did that look like? And he made this statement. He said three things very briefly in that short conversation that I thought were huge. The first thing he said was, I wrote them down so I wouldn't forget. He said, he said the first thing is it doesn't make sense to them. Like when because they would stand at the fence and watch us all day long work.
You can see that on their faces too, looking like what?
They're just sitting back. The kids are at the fence line just watching, watching our guys from college. We had some football players there, shirts off, digging holes, hitting rocks, breaking up concrete, doing all this stuff, and they're just watching us like what's going on. And he said they don't understand it. When he said that, I took it in like they don't understand. Not because it's not part of their culture, but when we talk about biblical masculinity, or we talking about Christians being service oriented, of helping someone when there's not a whole lot in return for us to get from that. And for them, it doesn't make sense. Why would these people travel so far to come and do something for us? That was their mindset. Like, why would they do it for us? And I thought that was huge. And for him, he's talking about Christian witness. That's what he's talking about. Like, these people have come because even though we're separated by thousands of miles, we're brothers and sisters in Christ, and they just want to come and be a source of help and support. And serve. The second thing that he said it's the practical application of the gospel. And I think that what he was trying to communicate to me was that as we join forces to help one another, like we see the unity that the gospel brings. Like it doesn't matter like where you're from, that sort of thing, but you also see the practical application of the gospel of like caring for people. You know, like that's good. They asked Jesus, "What's the greatest commandment?" Love the Lord, and then the second was love your neighbor. And I think like what he's saying is like when someone loves God, like practically you're going to love other people. And then the third thing that he said. Sorry, I'm preacher mode. You got 3 points. No. This is I love it. And this is the one that I like the most. He said it challenges them. It challenges them that, and we're talking about masculinity, especially like there's children watching us. There's ladies sitting at their storefronts because their home is their storefront too. But then there's also men just chilling, hanging out, watching us work all day. And he's like, that challenges them in a way that they're not challenged in our area. Yeah. Because you had literally, there's like 40 young college football players working their tails off every day. And it helps them see like, this isn't like we were talking about, work is not a curse. It's something that we're called to do and how we provide and how we serve others. And he says it challenges them to see other men stepping into that and like owning the responsibility of taking care of people. And that was just huge. And so
that's good. And we caught some glimpses, and something we did that I hadn't done on a previous trip is Jeffrey had us picking up trash. And so we broke up into, 4 or 5 groups?
Were you wasn't on that day? I wasn't there.
Okay. Well, in Bolingera, and we separated into these small groups and picked up trash, and people were looking at us like, what are they doing? And I think it was really impactful.
Yeah.
No, you got it.
Well, I was just going to say, but to answer the question a little bit, like, should we expect people to care or men to care about missions? I would say 100% we should. Like, absolutely. I think, like one of the notes I wrote from this trip this week was like, if God opens the door, then we walk through the door. Like, it's just something that, and so like, there's opportunity here to do stuff. And like you said, Jeff, like the argument of, like if we need to be mission oriented here before we're mission oriented somewhere else, but like God's given you opportunity to step through a door, like go be that source of encouragement and like the source of like for them, it's like, hey, we love the Lord. We want to see our communities change for Christ. Like we want to see the gospel make an impact here and grow God's kingdom. And if we can come alongside for a week, 2 weeks, and be a source, I think one of the things that makes it easier for us to go to Uganda, especially, I can't speak for like Ethiopia and DR because I haven't been there, but is that they're doing the work already. Like those churches are faithful churches who are loving their communities well, and we're just coming along to help support, being a source of encouragement, and they're doing it well already. So it's not like we're going in and, hey, we're going to build a fence, and then that's all we do. Like they're doing gospel work there, and we're just like, how can we encourage our brothers there in the process?
That's good.
Yeah, that's good. I think because the kickback for a lot of people is going to be, oh well, you're only there for a week. How can you really make an impact? In just a week? And if we were saying that this was in isolation, that we just go there we just went there
week
for
a
a week or for the year, and that was it. But the reality is, those partners that we partner with are they're doing
They're
the work.
our family.
They're our and when we support them, we're in communication all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's more of a partnership, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that's where, like, and that's why, and we said it a ton on the trip, is that did we have certain projects that we were trying to do to exploit these missionaries, these short-term missionaries? Yes. For those, we took 40 plus college football players over from Wheaton College and from Morningside College. So these guys were, just big dudes. I mean, it was hilarious because one of the times we had them introduce, the Ugandans wanted them to introduce their weight in kilograms. And so
A couple of them
We want
knew
to
how
know
to
your
do
name,
that
but we also
too.
want to know what you weigh.
and Josh was at that one, and I think Aiden and Josh were the last one. So Aiden stands up and he looks like a giant. I mean, he's 6'7",
Oh my gosh,
330.
huge.
And he's like, I'm 150 some kilograms. They're like,
And a
you can just
math
hear
major.
He's
Yeah.
6
Math
botas.
And Aiden, man, I love this kid because he's a bird watcher.
Yeah.
And so he had
He's
like
an old soul.
when we went to the Nile, he picked up 30 new species.
No
Yeah.
way.
And it was so cool because he's like number 5 in DuPage County in Illinois for bird watching. Like he's on the app and
Wow,
tracking.
really?
It was
Also,
like
he beat a bunch of people that day.
oh yeah, for sure. So it's
He
just neat
ranked
to
up.
see. So he gives his weight, and then Josh is like, I don't know what you said. You're like,
Yeah.
and I'm such and such kilograms, and they were just rolling. They just could not.
I'm just
believe how
picturing them be
large.
like, oh!
Well, so when Aiden stood up, you heard that. They were like, oh! It's almost like this.
Yeah.
Samson, Goliath, it's Goliath. Yeah, it was just
That's
really,
hilarious.
it was funny, but yeah, I think the idea is that we tried to communicate relationship, and one of the values that we value at Man Up is relationships.
Yeah.
It's one of the things we believe that change happens in relationships, that gospel change happens when one person who doesn't know Jesus can watch a person who does and see, wow, I really want what that person has. What is it?
Yeah.
And so when we're over there, it is less about whatever project we have. That's just kind of the excuse.
Yeah.
But once you get there, you realize, no, this is about connecting in relationship. And because we have a permanent place there in partnership, you talk about distinctives. We're in it for the long game. Because we have that permanent where we're in it, and in whatever capacity, we have laid the groundwork. They know that whether it's me or you or some college kid from Wheaton, that's a Man Up representative. And because of that, there's a certain credibility, there's a certain witness that has already taken place. And so now you're just furthering that trust, that bond of, and I think you said it, support. It's one of the things that we can do when we're there is just simply support, the work that it is already doing. We should never think that we're going over there to change anybody. I think that's one of the biggest misnomers.
They change us.
Correct.
More
Yeah.
Correct.
than me.
Well, and it's also like differentiating what missions we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Like we're not going into what's it called, the 1040 window, right?
Yeah.
Like we're not claiming that we're going to a place that hasn't been touched by the gospel already.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's, I think, where like people will go build a fence somewhere and not preach the gospel or anything. Like that's very different. What we're saying is there are people doing the groundwork, and we're here to supplement them in whatever ways we can to extend whatever they need so that they can keep growing and building.
Yeah.
It's very different. It's not,
Yeah.
like when we try to compare missions to mission, it's, that's why we have to differentiate it too.
Yeah. So like let's talk about that. We happen to be in Uganda and Ethiopia. Those are places that we're at, but in the DR. But what do we say to that person who says, shouldn't we care about the person? Because that's what I get. Like,
yeah.
we have work in there, and Man Up's got programs in the Tampa area, and Kansas City, and Southwest Missouri, and now with the Patros Project. I mean, we're getting inquiries from all over the place. So yeah, we're in our backyard. But what do you say to that person who's like, well, there's so many people you need to help here. Why are you going to Africa?
Oh, man.
What's your response to that?
Well, Jesus told us to go to all the nations. And personally, I just felt called to go the long distance. I think it's up to the person. You know, there's some people that don't want to go, but he told us to do it, and I think it's important to experience other cultures. It certainly has opened my eyes and just blessed my life beyond measure, going and seeing how other people worship and relate to their families. And so Jesus told us to, so that's the best reason.
Jesus, you can't get out of that one.
I'm a little more snarky.
I was about to say, my answer is like, not nice.
Yeah, I'm usually like, I didn't realize that God only cared about Americans.
Oh, wow.
Well, and also just mine is having been to the DR, having been to Uganda, and having conversations with Kendar and Hosanna about like foster care and just being like, hey, this is a situation that me and my wife just got into. We're fostering this and that. What would have happened to those kids in the DR?
Yeah.
And then being like, there's no system.
There's no resources.
There's nothing.
Yeah.
There's nothing.
No system.
Your family doesn't take care of you, or your family puts you in danger. That's it. And if the church doesn't receive any information about that, that's it. Right. You just become a child to the streets, and you'll be probably trafficked most likely. So like, yes, should we care for the kids in our communities? 100%. That's why we have the resources, the organizations. That's why the government gives us even tax benefits to take care of those in our communities. There's so many reasons that Americans can and should be involved in their backyard. It's actually too easy to where no one's doing it still for some reason, right?
Yeah.
But if, like, first of all, I asked that person, well, what do you do before you ask that question? Yeah. And then, like, before you ask that question, what are you doing locally? And if you're doing something locally, I would challenge you to do something for people in other countries, because you have no idea how little resources and systems there are in place. And not that they won't ever be in place, but how will they have that if we don't actually help provide those opportunities?
Well, and you remember the scriptures. I want to say it's in Pastor Josh. You can help me here.
Don't put me on the spot like that.
It's in one of the Corinthians, and he talks about Paul's collecting a gift, and he's collecting the gift, I believe, for the Jewish people, and so he's taking it from Corinth, and he's preparing the Corinthians. He's like, hey, you said you were going to give this gift. I just want to make sure that I'm prepping you. I'm going to be there. Make sure you give this gift so that we can take it to our friends in need in Jerusalem, knowing that one day they're going to repay you when you're in need. And so I think it's Corinthians.
I think you're right, because it's the passage where most people talk about tithing out of, but they're really making a collection for
they're taking a collection for the poor. And so it's like when God, now having been, and I haven't been all over the world like some people, but I've been to enough places internationally to see. And I'll tell you this, I love the good old USA. I love the red, white, and blue.
Some barbecue.
Air conditioning.
I always want to come back for
Sunday night football, Super Bowl, America.
And I, like you, Vicki, I love to see other cultures and how they live. But at the end of the day, I grew up here, and this is what I know, and this is what I love, and God placed me here. But when I see how other people live, I realize, GDP in Uganda is $1,000 per person. I mean, come on, what are we talking about?
We talking about practice?
Practice. I'm gonna go Allan Iverson on you. Like we you need to dub that in. Practice. Talking about practice.
No, but there's a reason. Even I've asked you before, why did you adopt? Because you could have adopted, and not that people shouldn't adopt locally, domestically. I think God calls us all differently, but there was even a reason why you did that. And that was
for me it was gospel. Like in America, you've got a church on every corner, so you're going to hear the gospel. In China, what are the odds you're going to hear the gospel, right? In Ethiopia, they're primarily Orthodox, and I can tell you that Orthodox church is missing a lot, in terms of gospel. So it's and he was in the village, so it's for me, it was that opportunity for gospel ministry, but the resources that we have in comparison to the rest of the world, the financial resources are just off the charts. So someone giving $10 a month is really substantial.
Life changing.
Right.
Yeah.
So if like you're thinking, well, I don't, missions, okay, maybe I'm hearing a little bit of what you're saying, but I don't know if I'm called to go. Okay, but are you called to give? Like, can you spare $10 a month? Can you spare $45 for child sponsorship? Can you spare that? Because that is life-giving
Right.
over there.
Prayer.
And it's nothing for us.
Well, I think too, like when we're talking about like the person who said, well, should we go, should we not? And the fact of the matter is the church is global. Like you can
Right.
talk about
that's right.
denominations, you can talk about different avenues that people worship, but the church is a people. It's global. And the fact is that we have, just like you were talking about, like we have brothers and sisters in Christ that were created in the image of God, just like these Americans are, who could desperately need some support, who desperately can need. And that's not a savior mentality. It's a, I love you and you're my brother. How can I help you get through this season, or how can I help you set you up in a different position? And I think there's room for that. Like you might think you don't have access, but there's room for that. Even within your limited budget. Yeah, because it's I think we're called to show unity in a way that would express the glory of God globally. And I think I don't think it's off limits. I don't think it should be something that should be as debated as it is.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about best practices here. Like, get your mind thinking about that because,
Do y'all want to hear more of that conversation? Well, you can by becoming a Patros subscriber. You'll get exclusive member-only content. Just go to the link in the description or go to the Patros website.
Yeah, and when you become a subscriber, like what you're telling us is that you enjoy this content and you want to hear more of it. So every dollar that you give helps us do just that.
So thank you again for listening as we just together go on this journey of embracing healthy masculinity.